Well, it's looking like it could be one of the tightest elections in US history. And Waleed is in Washington, D.C. Waleed, is it feeling as tight over there as we're being told it is?
You know what? This is such a strange election because there are so many elements of the voting bloc that could break off and vote in ways you don't expect. We've covered a few of them over the course of our coverage of this. But there's one group that we're going to look at tonight that is really unpredictable and might be catching a few people by surprise, and that is Republicans who have decided to vote against Donald Trump. Have a look.
Lawrence County in western Pennsylvania is Republican heartland. In the last two elections, Republican votes have outnumbered Democrats here by almost 2-1.
If you would have been here in 2016 and in 2020, there was a Trump sign on almost every house.
For Danny Bias, the party runs in her veins.
Hey guys.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good.
To see you.
Hi, Willie.
Hey, dude.
Bias.
Danny.
How are you doing?
My family has sat there and been in charge of the Republican Party for the area, so always a Republican. I voted for Trump both in 2016 and in 2020.
But for her and her partner, Jim, there won't be a third time.
What turned you?
January 6th. I cannot stand behind a candidate that would sit there and go against everything this country is founded on. I just can't.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
And I just sat there in horror as I watched my own countrymen attack a building that stands for our freedom for no reason other than they disagreed with a free election. You can disagree with the elections all you want. The purpose is we vote and then we stand by what the outcome is. Whether you agree with it or not, this isn't for life. You can do it again in 4 years. But don't sit there and trample on our beliefs and our Constitution and what this country was founded on.
Danny and Jim are part of a growing number of Republican Party faithful preparing to do the previously unthinkable. Vote Democrat.
For me, I'm still a Republican. I agree with some things now because I'm more middle-of-the-road conservative, but there's a lot of stuff I don't like. And, you know, the biggest thing is I voted for Trump twice. Not this time.
Yeah. This could be any street corner in any American city, but it is right here in 1856 that a group of anti-slavery politicians held the first convention of a new political party, the Republican Party, making Pittsburgh the cradle of the GOP. They would choose Abraham Lincoln 4 years later as their presidential nominee. But fast forward to today, and we have the Lincoln Project, lifelong Republicans devoted not to electing the Republican nominee, but defeating him.
He rambles on and on.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats.
This November, vote for a new generation.
It's like the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The Republican Party of 2024 doesn't really in any way resemble the Republican Party of a dozen years ago when Mitt Romney was the nominee.
Jeff Timmer spent 30 years at the highest levels of the Republican Party.
The Republican Party has ceased being a rule of law party. They now have, for the first time ever, a convicted felon heading their presidential ticket. We've never had a situation like this before. A man who is willing to callously break the law in order to achieve his personal aims and personally enrich himself.
You seem genuinely fearful of what a Trump presidency might mean. Why exactly?
Donald Trump attempted after the last election to overturn a free and fair election to stay in power despite the fact that he had lost. I am fearful of somebody who will stop at any ends, who will not stop, who has no boundaries, no constraints. And when you couple that with his hand-picked Supreme Court saying that a president in office has near total immunity to do whatever they want, that is a recipe for totalitarianism, authoritarianism. You can call it fascism.
You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
A string of high-profile Republicans have come out backing Kamala Harris, from former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger to former Vice President Dick Cheney and his daughter, daughter, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney.
I'm honored to have made the decision to endorse Vice President Harris. I think that we are facing a choice in this election. It's not about party. It's about right and wrong.
In August, hundreds of high-level staffers from 4 former Republican presidential nominees signed an open letter in support of Harris, stating we have plenty of honest ideological disagreements with Vice President Harris, but that re-electing President Trump would be a disaster for our nation.
Do you think he's a fascist?
Well, I'm looking at the definition of fascism. It's a far-right, authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology movement characterized by a dictatorial leader. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, for sure.
Trump's longest-serving chief of staff, a highly respected Marine general, has publicly said Trump fits the description of a fascist and would rule like a dictator. Backing him up, more than a dozen former Trump officials.
His plan would be a disaster for the U.S. economy, and her plan keeps us going in the right direction.
Trump's own former vice president, Mike Pence, is refusing to endorse him.
It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
But these objections from establishment Republicans only matter if they shift Republican votes. And while the best polls suggest between 5 and 10% of Republicans may defect, it's notoriously difficult to measure, and it matters which states they're in. We're sitting here in Pennsylvania. This could be the most important state in the election. If there are Republicans who are going to shift to Harris, how many of them do you think are in Pennsylvania?
A lot. I think there's a lot more open-minded Republicans that just want this country to be free and want it to be economically stable and want it to be secure. And if you want those things, there's no way you can cast a vote for Donald Trump.
And among those Republicans voting for Harris, women are expected to be strongly represented.
You can vote any way you want. The one place in America where women still have a right to choose.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
You have Roe versus Wade that has been overturned. That is a huge problem for women, especially in a country where we're all supposed to be equal. Right now, women can't get equal health care in a lot of states. So there are some very significant issues that are on the table that are cross-party issues. Whether or not a woman has a right to her own health care doesn't matter whether you belong to the Republicans or the Democrats or the Independents. That's a moral issue. So if you're just voting according to your heart, I think there's going to be a lot of people that end up voting for Harris.
If these disillusioned Republicans do end up costing Trump the White House, it will reverberate well into the future, revealing a party too divided to govern in its current form and possibly bringing the Republicans' 8-year Trumpist experiment to an end.
The presidential oath basically comes down to a few sentences, and all it is you protect the Constitution at any cost. And that is an oath that you take to protect everyone in the country. And if you can't even hold to that oath, there's a problem. And I can't trust you with my security. I can't trust you with anything.
Well, while there've always been Republicans against Trump, but are there going to be enough to swing the election for Harris?
This group is like a phantom that is just stalking the election. And we don't really know how many are going to be in this camp. We know there have been anyone but Trumpers since 2015. They certainly didn't stop Trump winning in 2016. There are, however, signs that they might be about to cause a ruckus. And one of those signs is, you remember the primary process. Nikki Haley was one of the key people who took on Donald Trump, got knocked out in the primary process, eventually endorsed Donald Trump. But what we might forget about that is, when she was out of the race, she still got hundreds of thousands of votes in that primary process. What happens to those people who were voting against Donald Trump when she wasn't, their candidate wasn't even in the race? They're the kinds of people that might be peeled off. And in key states where the margins are so fine, it really could tip things. It's just such a wild card, and it's going to be fascinating to watch how it unfolds.
Well, Harris's final rally had so much star power. Lady Gaga performing.
Yeah.
Do these big stars help her win people over, or does that sort of lean into that Republican Hollywood sort of narrative?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Kate, because we saw it didn't help Hillary Clinton in 2016. So there is definitely no immediate connection between celebrity endorsements and winning an election. In the case of Kamala, it's slightly different, and it's particularly different in the case of certain celebrities. So when you've got someone like Ricky Martin, or you've got someone like Jennifer Lopez coming out, they are very particularly chosen and very powerfully chosen, particularly for Puerto Rican voters, who you might recall last week, there was that joke about Puerto Rico being just garbage in the sea that was told by a comedian at a Trump rally. Yeah, so for those sort of endorsements that have a particular narrative connection to a particular group of voters, I can see that working.
All right, it's only 24 hours out, and I know what you're going to say, it's too close to call.
Yeah.
But, mate, there's no point in having you on unless you give us a name. Who's going to win?
Kamala Harris. There's a name.
Really?
No. Is that a bet, Waleed?
My theory is Trump has fewer ways to win. Kamala has a bit more room for error in the people she's targeting and who might turn out, whereas Trump is really going for a particular kind of voter, especially a male voter and especially a young voter. And the problem he has is they are not people who typically turn out and vote. Now, he might be a miracle worker. He might be able to get them out and vote. And if he does that, he might win. And there are other bits and pieces that might break off in his favour. But he's going for something, he's doing a high wire act. Kamala has a different sort of high wire act. I feel her wire is slightly wider.
We'll have to clip that up and use it tomorrow night during the coverage.
Oh, yeah. All right, Doctor. Fancy Doctor. Great theory, but Mudang backs Trump. So what do you say to that, huh? Academic?
I've never known Mudang to get an election wrong. So it is a fair point that you make. I guess it's me versus Mudang in some kind of smackdown, Sam. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, we'll get Mudang on the desk.
I will be here talking to you tomorrow. Let's see if Mudang shows up.
Yes. And also tomorrow we want you wearing a winner's T-shirt, whoever that may be.
Special coverage is kicking off tomorrow, Waleed. We will see you then.
All right. See you, team.